Hello guys, welcome back to our anime moments. Guys, please like the video and subscribe to my channel. Today is explanation of upcoming episode of Tales of Herding Gods based on novel. So let's start. Daoist Ling Jing's expression changed drastically, and he moved back continuously. Qin Devil King and the Dragon Qilin were also forced to move back by Qin Mu's aura. Even when they were thousands of yards away from him, they still couldn't get a stable footing. Meanwhile, under Qin Mu's feet, the face of the Moon Guardian had sunk into the moon ship by the pressure from the feet. Originally, he had still been hanging by a thread, but when he got stepped onto, he fused completely with the moon ship, becoming part of it and dying. The old Moon Guardian died. Daoist Ling Jing was shaken. The death of the old Moon Guardian didn't concern him since this person was a lunatic, but the growth of Qin Mu's body attracted all of his attention. The youth had actually broken through the shackles of the living realm of the dead. When entering the living realm of the dead, even existence like Daoist Ling Jing would have their blood and flesh stripped off, leaving him a walking skeleton. When Qin Mu had entered here with him, he was also left with only his bones. It was the same for the Dragon Qilin, while Qin Devil King sported no changes only because he had no flesh or bones. And then, not only had Qin Mu's flesh returned, his body had also become larger and larger, as if he was a heavenly god with divine light surrounding him. He replaced the last Moon Guardian of the Moon Herders to become the new Moon Guardian. The power which he controlled now was too strong, so it broke through the limitations of the living realm of the dead, which resulted in them being able to do nothing. This was something that was nearly impossible. Daoist Ling Jing had come to this moon ship many times and examined everything here numerous times. He had touched the pillars countless times, but he had never undergone such an astonishing transformation like Qin Mu. He had thought that only the Moon Herders had this ability and not even all of them. Just the ones who had a special constitution. The human body is like a large smelting furnace. An ordinary Moon Herder should not be able to contain the terrifying energy from the moon ship, so only those with a special constitution could receive such a large amount of energy. The Moon Herders should have been wiped out, with this elder on the ship being the last of them. However, he had now also sunk into the moon ship and lost his life. For Qin Mu to be able to control the moon ship and its energy, could he be a Moon Herder, and one with a special constitution among his kind? However, Qin Mu was not a Moon Herder. Grasping the huge pillars was considered an abnormally dangerous act to other people, even if they were Moon Herders. However, it was very safe for him to do it. It was as if his body could naturally withstand this energy and automatically reconstruct his body and soul to handle it. What powerful energy! Qin Mu was surprised and delighted. The energy in his body had reached an unimaginable realm, which gave him a sensation that his previous power was like a water droplet in front of the ocean. It was simply insignificant. Now, with just a raise of a hand, he felt like he could change the landscape, to change and even control the rules of the world. Rings of moonlight covered Qin Mu's surroundings. Those rings seemed to flow down from the top of his head like flowing water, going down to the bottom of his feet before disappearing into the moon ship. His feet had already started to sink inside, fusing with the ship. This was moon ship's counterattack. Qin Mu had once seen this kind of counterattack on the body of the Sun Guardian of the Sun ship. Sun Guardian was Sun Herder Yang Jingjing. Since the sun of the Sun ship had been extinguished, she had to bear the counterattack of the Sun ship by burning her life to control and receive its immense energy. The longer she controlled the Sun ship, the faster her life was drained away. The broken moon above the moon ship was also extinguished and had no light emanating from it. For Qin Mu to control the ship and borrow its energy, the price was his own life. He had to move quickly and borrow the power and speed of the moon ship to delve deeper into the darkness to find Carefree Village, Village Chief, and the other villagers. Otherwise, the price would become too huge for him to bear if he wanted to break free. Senior brother Ling Jing, thank you for your help. Qin Mu looked down at him from above and said in a booming voice, but now, I have to find Village Chief and the rest while the darkness is still here, farewell. Daoist Ling Jing suppressed the shock in his heart and flew off the moon ship to float in mid-air. This Daoist was now a skeleton and the Daoist robe on his body had also become tattered. Raising his head, he said, "Cult Master, please." Boom! The enormous moon ship took a stride. Below the body of the ship was the shape of a three-legged toad formed by the majestic mountains. With a step, they could cover 10 miles. With a few steps, the moon ship walked out of the gate of Fengju with its chains dragging the broken black moon still in mid-air out of the living realm of the dead. Meanwhile, in Fengju, the strong practitioners all flew out to see the traces of the moon ship leaving into the distance. These strong practitioners of Fengju didn't give chase. When moon ship had entered Fengju back in the day, Yama of Fengju had not received the moon guardian. He only let the moon ship stay at the wasteland outside the city. Now that the moon ship was leaving, Yama of Fengju didn't bother to pay attention to it. A bird-headed and human-bodied mutant came flapping over and called out to Daoist Ling Jing. Daoist Ling Jing, Yama requests the pleasure of seeing you. Daoist Ling Jing immediately followed him into Fengju and walked into the hall of Yamaraja. At this moment, tens of thousands of yards of light shone from Qin Mu's body, which made him look like a heavenly god that was crafted from a moon. He controlled the enormous ship to walk out of the living realm of the dead, cross the sea of fog, and enter the great ruins which were shrouded in darkness. He could feel the boundless energy in his body, and every single one of the divine treasure in his body was opened. No matter if it was spirit embryo, 5 elements, 6 directions, 7 stars, celestial being, life and death or divine bridge, they were all filled with terrifying energy, and there was still even more energy pouring in. On the inside of the moon ship were incomparably complicated formations, and when his palm had gotten into contact with the huge pillar, the formations had been activated. Boundless energy poured into him to reconstruct his body, his soul, his spirit embryo, and allow his realm to surpass divine bridge, reaching an unimaginable realm. The realm of heavenly gods. It was hard to imagine what kind of realm this energy would reach if this was a complete ship. Carefree village, village chief, I'm coming. As the huge moon ship moved forward through the darkness, the scenery around it flashed past like flickering lights and passing shadows. The jade pendant on Qin Mu's neck had also become huge and floated up in the night to point towards a faraway place in the darkness. Suddenly, this jade pendant came off from his neck and flew into the distance. Qin Mu controlled the moon ship to increase its speed to not lose the jade pendant which was flying swiftly through the darkness. As the ship moved faster, it compressed the space, which caused thunder and lightning to occur at the same time, tearing apart the darkness continuously. Above the moon ship, there were huge rocks crashing down continuously from the broken moon. As they streaked across the sky, they left trails of fire as they descended into the darkness of great ruins. Wherever the moon ship walked, meteors fell in its wake. This caused the surroundings of moon ship to be filled with fire and smoke, stinging the eyes. On the deck of the moon ship, there were too many palaces to count. This was where the moon herders had lived, but after a great battle, they had all been wiped out. The last moon herder was the moon guardian, but even he was consumed by the moon ship when Qin Mu became the new moon guardian. Dutian Devil King and the Dragon Qilin hid in a palace that had yet to collapse so as to avoid Qin Mu's world-shaking aura. The Dragon Qilin soon shut his eyes from all the shaking and fell asleep. Dutian Devil King was not sleepy, so he looked out from the window of the palace. He could see the majestic Qin Mu standing at the center of the pillars like a tall mountain. His power had materialized into the rings of moonlight that were falling down his body, and they were extremely terrifying. This world is not as lowly as I thought. These god artifacts require an extremely profound path, skills, and divine arts. It's not something that an ordinary civilization could create. Dutian Devil King's gaze wavered, and he found himself at a loss. Am I really going to invade such a world? What worries me are actually not the heights which the civilization of this world had reached, but the thing that had destroyed something like it. Countless monsters in the darkness of great ruins were alarmed and surged over. Even though these monsters were massive in size, they weren't that great when compared to the moon ship. They were like ants and were slow as well. The moon ship crushed all of them, and among the constant booms, crunching sounds could also be faintly heard. It was hard to say how many mysterious organisms had been flattened into pancakes and turned into a pile of mush in the darkness. There were countless devils pouncing towards the moon ship as well, and devil voices could be heard. These devils were trying their best to board this land ship, but they were immediately killed by the lightning created by the movement of the moon ship, and their corpses dropped down like rain. Chandra Nova, Sanskrit, moon ship. In the darkness, a terrifying aura surged forth as a black figure became bigger and bigger. With feathers like clouds, it flew over from the darkness and leaped into the thunder layer formed by the moon ship, bringing devil clouds to invade it. From the devil clouds, the enormous devil popped out its heads, and all 9 of them spewed devil flames towards Qin Mu, who was at the center of the pillars. The blazing flames lighted up the night sky, and the body of the enormous devil rolling back into the clouds could be seen. It seemed like a bird, but a flood dragon as well. It was as if the devil was a monster that was a fusion between the 2 different species. Garuda! Dutian Devil King cried out in astonishment. Moonlight lingered around Qin Mu's body, blocking the devil flames. Suddenly, a crescent opened up in the heart of his brows and slowly turned into a full moon like a door opening. Soon, a full moon appeared in the heart of his brows. This wasn't a real full moon but an eye that was giving off a light that was similar to moonlight. Pew! A snow-white light flashed across the horizon and sliced apart the darkness. It cut through the devil flames that filled the sky, and the heads of the devil started to fall from mid-air. There were exactly 9 heads, no more and no less, while behind them were necks that were squirming like dragons and spurting blood. The full moon on Qin Mu's forehead slowly closed and turned into a crescent again, which disappeared as well. Dutian Devil King shut his mouth and didn't say a word. After this brat let me go, I'll definitely not invade this twisted world. The moon ship continued traveling forward while devils continued to surge towards it. Suddenly, shrieks came from the darkness, and the countless devils suddenly retreated, disappearing into the darkness. Qin Mu's jade pendant, which was floating in front of the ship, looked incomparably small, as though it was a speck of dust. Suddenly, it clanked as though it had collided with a formless barrier. As if it was water of the lake stretching vertically from the heaven to the earth, ripples started to gently undulate on the barrier. They spread out with the jade pendant at the center, growing larger and larger. Meanwhile, at the center of the ripple, another world was gradually showing the tip of its grandeur. This was Carefree Village. Qin Mu stood on the majestic moon ship with his hands stretched out to hold the pillars. He was like a giant getting punished as he looked at the world that had appeared in front of him. Behind him, the broken moon floated in the sky while meteors fell down from time to time. As they crashed around the moon ship, the incomparably black darkness was lighted up. Behind the light, the devils were in a disorder. They were bustling with activity and making a commotion. In front of the ship, however, was a pure land that had never been invaded by the darkness. It was cut off from the rest of the world, tranquil, mysterious, and filled with the unknown. It was hard to imagine that there was such a serene place in great ruins. In front of Qin Mu were a vast forest and an endless mountain range. However, at a place farther away, the ground was suddenly cut off as if it was emptied out by someone. With the sea and cloud separating them, there was a city that stood tall and upright in mid-air. It was like the place where immortals lived. The sky was filled with golden clouds and light, while below palaces towered into the cloudy heaven. Floating high up in the clouds was an unbroken chain of mountain peaks which revealed their bright golden peaks. In the depths of the clouds, majestic god statues stood like an emperor protecting his territories. A huge machinery floated 3,000 yards away from the sky, operating quietly. Countless formations were imprinted into the mysterious iron and gold structure, forming an incomparably complicated large-scale machine. Energy produced by it materialized into trails of flowing light which connected the city and the sky. However, everything was already destroyed. Qin Mu was stunned. In front of him was a ruined Carefree Village. The one dazzling sky city was now a ruin. The palaces that towered into the clouds were riddled with holes, and the unbroken chain of peaks that was floating in the sky had been smashed and shattered. Broken rocks of all shapes and sizes floated in the sea of clouds while majestic god statues stood slanted, missing limbs here and there. In the middle of the sun in the sky was a huge black dot which had already swallowed more than half of the sun. Only the golden halo around it remained, looking like a golden hoop. The city above the clouds had been destroyed, and the great machinery that stood upright in the sky was broken as well. Its shattered components floated quietly around. Only a couple huge pieces of machinery remained operating, maintaining the barrier of Carefree Village. Not far from the moon ship, there was a horizontally inscribed board stabbed diagonally into the forest. On that toppled overly large inscribed stele, 2 words were written. They said, Xiao Pal. The horizontally inscribed board was broken. A pang of sorrow suddenly surged through Qin Mu, and it grew frantically until it filled his whole heart. There was no carefree village in this world anymore. There was no place to be carefree anymore. This giant who was standing on the moon ship and holding the pillars seemed to be bearing the punishment of heaven as he lowered his head. He knelt down, and tears dripped droplet by droplet onto the solid floor. The home that he longed for had already been destroyed, and nothing remained of it anymore. He had looked for such a long time, fantasized about his home in his dreams, his family, neighbors, and friends, but all of them had suddenly been shattered with the appearance of this world in front of him. It was like a drawing done on the sand, vanishing with the gust of a wind. There was no longer any home, any mother waiting for her son, any stern father. All of the things he had fantasized about were no longer there. He awoke from his dream. He was still the orphan adopted by the numerous old, weak, sick, and elderly people. His hometown was gone. Qin Devil King raised his head and looked out the window to see the giant kneeling among the pillars. The giant that was shrouded in the hazy moonlight had his face facing downward, so only the shaking of his shoulders could be seen. At this moment, Qin Devil King could well imagine the youth's pain. When his Qin world was annihilated, he had felt the same sorrow. He was inconsolable and couldn't suppress his emotions. While he was bawling, he blamed the world, and with his overflowing anger, he had fought with the messengers of death from Yudu, trying to save the lives of his clansmen. He was struck down countless times, and his body was broken along with his soul. Then he had finally submitted himself to fate. In Qin Mu, he saw himself the past, the him when he was young, the him that was about to be struck down and submit to fate. When life is weak and one's direction is lost, coming and going like a lunatic. When playing in the mud, it's hard to know the luminosity of a pearl. How many trials and how many hardships, how much obliteration must one suffer to temporarily return back to fear? Where is home? Where is my home? Qin Mu gradually raised his head up with a cold gaze. His eyes were like the bright luster given off by the moon. When he closed his eyes, that light vanished, but when he reopened them, they were like 2 bright moons. As he stood on the moon ship, his emotions rose and fell as myriads of thoughts went through his mind. He was unable to calm down for a long time. I didn't come here to find Carefree Village, but to search for village chief, granny, and the rest. They are my kin, and disabled elderly village is my hometown. It's the carefree village of my heart. Qin Mu composed himself and looked around. Suddenly, he saw a couple of stone statues placed at the border of the barrier. Even existences of the god realm would find it hard to travel through the darkness of great ruins unless they were carrying god statues. However, god statues were extremely dense, and even existences of cult master level would find it hard to carry them. They would be unable to travel far with them. The stone statues at the edge should have been transported here using great magical power to force the darkness back. After entering Carefree Village, these stone statues were no longer useful and was thus left behind. Qin Mu's heart stirred. Village chief could have brought apothecary to walk in the darkness and deal with all kinds of strange peculiarities, while Mute should have a method of his own to deal with the darkness. As for Old Ma, Cripple, Butcher, and Blind, they would have needed the stone statues to be able to move in the darkness. Old Ma, Cripple, and Butcher's body had already recovered, so they could walk a longer distance while carrying a god statue. No one knew the extent of Deaf's abilities, but not even ghosts and gods dared doubt the greatness of his painting skills. Eternal Peace Imperial Preceptor was his hardcore admirer who took honor in collecting his paintings. While what concerned Granny, the previous cult master Li Qianqing was hidden in her body, so she should be able to carry the god statue as well. These statues here should have been left behind by the villagers. In that case, they must have found their way here. Could it be that they entered this place and got trapped, which is why they couldn't return to the village for New Year's? Qin Mu opened his eyes and looked around. Vigorous energy poured into his eyes, and he executed the 9 Heavens Eye awakening skill that Blind had taught him to its maximum. I'm here. Village Chief, Granny, I'm going to bring you guys back for New Year's. He didn't step into Carefree Village straight away but first checked it out from outside. Village Chief and the rest were extremely strong, so if they had really entered Carefree Village, it wouldn't look as serene as it was now. There must be no lack of danger inside, because of which they got trapped. Even the moon ship couldn't guarantee Qin Mu's safety. His gaze landed on the forest in front of Carefree Village and saw the traces that Village Chief and the rest had left. The divine arts of great practitioners like Village Chief and Mute would cause astonishing damage to the surroundings. However, this wasn't the case by the forest. Although there were traces of a battle there, the damage wasn't extensive. Qin Mu's gaze followed the traces and saw a few ruins in the forest. The path that Village Chief and the rest had taken went along them. The reason why the path was along these ruins was that this was the only path, the only safe way to enter Carefree Village. Other than this path, every other place was restricted. Qin Mu looked with 9 Heavens divine eyes and saw faint rays of light which were extremely treacherous in the forest. However, he couldn't see what the restrictions were. These restrictions were extremely dangerous, so the path along the ruins was much safer in comparison. Qin Mu continued to stare fixedly forward. At this moment, he saw a few strands of fine light bursting forth from a ruin which was about 300 miles away from him, but not far from the end of the forest. Qin Mu's vital qi burst forth, and he plucked down the jade pendant from the barrier. Activating Moon Ship, he took a stride forward and entered the barrier. HNNN. A gentle tremor came over him, and he felt like he had crossed into another world. The darkness which shrouded great ruins instantly vanished behind him, and when he turned his head to look behind, he could see nothing. At this moment, he suddenly heard weird laughter. Countless devils that had been hugging the body of Moon Ship leaped off the ship and surged into the forest like a flood. A devil god that had 2 heads and 5 tails rose into the air. She also had 8 long legs which had palms instead of feet which she used to scurry through the air while shouting sternly, Vada, Sanskrit, kill. Dutian Devil King jumped in shock. He totally didn't expect that there would be so many devils secretly hiding on the ship in the cover of darkness. The devil god turned her head back and chuckled at Qin Mu who was on the ship. Fancy finding by sheer luck what one has been searched for far and wide. We had wanted to enter Carefree Village for quite a long time, so we must thank you for leading us here. This devil god was none other than that one Qin Mu and Village Chief had met in the living realm of the dead. It was also this devil god who had lured Qin Mu out into the darkness after he had met the sun ship in Border Dragon City to kidnap him. It was evident that this devil god had long ago hidden herself on the moon ship to wait for a chance. She seemed to have known that Qin Mu would definitely return to the living realm of the dead one day and borrow the moon ship to return to Carefree Village. And now, she had finally succeeded. My children, take over the last of the Pure Land. From today onwards, this world shall be ours, that devil god cried out and brought the omnipresent devils to surge towards the other end of the forest. Qin Mu was expressionless as he gazed at these heavenly devils. Suddenly, a cryptic pulse came from the forest and the flesh and bones of the tens of thousands heavenly devils that had surged forward melted away. Only their skin was left, but when the gust of wind blew past, even it turned into ashes and scattered away. The devil god who had rushed into the sky above the forest instantly rushed out. Sapaimi! A huge whirlpool appeared and sucked her in. Qin Mu had seen this method before. When fighting against the village chief, the devil god had created the space leading to the other shore and pulled village chief into it, trying to trap him there. Never had she then expect to fall inside it as well. Now she had executed this method not to trap anyone, but to avoid the danger in the forest by hiding in the other shore. Right then, a ball of fire rose from the forest, and a beam shot out from it into the depths of the space. In the sky, a trail of fresh blood flowed out, and the corpse of that devil god appeared fell down. Once it crashed into the forest, the corpse turned into ashes. On the moon ship, Dutian Devil King was quiet out of fear, his blood running cold. This goddamn world, can it not be so treacherous? The pure white moonlight in Qin Mu's eyes drifted like mist, and a booming voice sounded out as he muttered to himself, your deaths have affirmed my guess. This restricted area is not to defend against any invasion of enemies, but to prevent people of Carefree Village from walking out. It was left behind by the existence that destroyed great ruins. Qin Devil King heard what Qin Mu said and was slightly stunned, then instantly understood what he was saying. This restricted area in the forest was not to defend against the invasion of enemies, but to prevent people of Carefree Village from walking out. If it was to defend against outside enemies, then only people who barged in would be attacked by the restricted area. Whereas here, no matter if people were trying to go in or to come out, they would all receive ruthless obliteration. The ruins to the side should be the path that the people of Carefree Village had opened up by force to escape Carefree Village, and not a path that had formed naturally. To understand the situation from the slightest clue, ordinary people would have never noticed this. The ones who taught this brat are definitely absolute villains that are incomparably cunning. Qin Devil King shuddered uncontrollably. It was obvious that the heavenly devils that had clung to the ship hadn't escaped Qin Mu's detection. The reason he didn't reveal his knowledge was to have them test the path. Such a ruthless and sinister youth would definitely have absolute villains for his teachers. Qin Devil King sized up the restricted area and thought to himself, with just the moon ship, we can't enter this place. Moon ship is too huge, and if we barged in, we would definitely trigger the restricted area. If it was so simple for the restricted area to obliterate that female devil god, destroying the moon ship shouldn't be too troublesome either. Just as he thought this, the moon ship suddenly trembled and gradually squatted down. A huge tremor shook the enormous three-legged ship as it lay down on the floor and stopped moving. Qin Devil King immediately felt the heavenly god aura around Qin Mu gave disappear, and he let out a sigh of relief. If Qin Mu had driven the moon ship into the restricted area, even he would have been destroyed. Even though Qin Mu had seen the destruction of Carefree Village, he still possessed his rationality, which astonished Qin Devil King. He then kicked the dragon Qilin awake. The dragon Qilin shook his head and followed behind him while asking in a low and muffled voice, Iron Lump, where are we? Qin Devil King became furious. You slept all the way and still have the face to ask me. The dragon Qilin smiled. You also don't know where we are? Apparently, you have also slept all the way. At the center of the huge pillars, Qin Mu's body returned back to normal, and he pulled back his legs that had sunk into the ship. The body of the ship had fused with his legs, but since Qin Mu's body had grown extremely gigantic earlier, he had left huge footprints after he had shrunk in size. This allowed him to pull out his legs. Qin Mu stood up, and his mind immediately trembled. He was incomparably weak at that moment, and the divine treasures that had been opened up by the huge amount of energy from the moon ship closed one after another. Only spirit embryo and 5 elements divine treasures did not leave him. The ship's energy was too great for the current him, so if he wanted to control it, he had to exhaust his life force as a price. Yang Jingjing has always lived on the sun ship, so she had exhausted way more life force than me. It's been really hard on her. Qin Mu took in 2 deep breaths and consumed some spirit pills to supplement his body. He rose then and said, Devil King, Fatty Dragon, let's enter this restricted area. Qin Devil King let out a shaky breath and said, You're planning to use my knowledge and vision to avoid the dangers and find the villains of your village. Qin Mu nodded. You are the Devil King of Duqian World, the King of Devil Gods. Your knowledge and vision are much greater than mine, so only you can bring me in. Duqian Devil King laughed out loud and said proudly, That's right, only I can bring you in and out safely, you can lick my feet. Qin Mu's expression changed slightly, and Duqian Devil King immediately changed his words as he laughed. I'm joking, look at you. I can bring you in and out, but you must release me as you promised. You agreed to it. Qin Mu smiled. Don't worry, I will definitely not eat my words. I can sign the Pact of Earth Count with you. Duqian Devil King shook his head. No need for that. If we sign the Pact of Earth Count, I won't believe you anymore. You will definitely dig a hole for me to jump into. Qin Mu laughed coarsely and thought to himself, Duqian Devil King really knows me well. With just a verbal promise, I find it embarrassing to trick him. Grandpa Cripple is right, I'm still too kind. He jumped onto the dragon Chilean's back and Jutian Devil King also got on. Fire clouds grew under the dragon Chilean's feet, and they slowly descended onto the ground. Soon, they reached the edge of the restricted area. Jutian Devil King was extremely nervous and spat out a few gears from his mouth. Even though there's a safe path here, this safe path was established from inside. If we follow it to walk out, there won't be much danger, but if we use it to walk in, we'll face quite some danger. You must keep close to me and not take the wrong path. If you trigger the restricted area, we'll all die. Qin Mu immediately moved forward and opened up the god statue's chest to adjust the gears there. Adding a few more spare parts, he reminded Devil King, "Don't try to play any tricks or you will be trapped as well." Jutian Devil King replied in a bad mood, "Don't worry, I understand. Stick close." Qin Mu followed after him, and the 4 faces and 12 eyes of Jutian Devil King looked around. His 4 mouths muttered as he saw through the dangers in the restricted area and did his calculations. Qin Mu even saw Jutian Devil King using his devil chi to execute methods of space calculation. Countless numbers and runes moved in the air as he did incomparably complicated calculations. This video will end here.